Today's topic is email, which is one of those things that everyone knows a bit about, and with the exception of a very few bizarre techies in universities and research institutes, not many people know everything about. We're going to have a look at it fairly simply. The first thing I think that's useful is to look at what an email address actually is, because sometimes people get quite confused about what the bits are telling you. We're going to look at addressing, in other words, sending emails to people, what CC is and what BCC is. An amazing number of people have no idea that these things even exist. How to check who has actually sent you an email. The common mistakes people make, and again, looking at CC and BCC, and I'll explain what they are in a minute or two. We'll look at email lists and how they can help you and how they can get in your way if you're not careful. We'll look at managing email, which in the sessions that I've had, the one-to-ones, an amazing number of people have no idea how you can actually manage email to actually make it easier. We'll look at our favorite one, the spelling mistakes, and the evil that is autocorrect and its ability to completely change what you're saying unless you're careful. And then we'll look at attachments, pictures, and all those things. And then there'll be a very short summary at the end. I would aim to run the session so that we've got time before 12 o'clock for the chat questions to come along. But let's start at the very beginning. My first thoughts about email. Email is absolutely fantastic. It's the way that we do so much nowadays. When I was working, thank goodness I'm not anymore, but when I was working, it was the only way of keeping in touch with colleagues and clients and suppliers and all the rest of it. It's absolutely great. Email is an absolute nightmare. It's evil, it's awful, because you get tons and tons of email, and the ones that you want to read can get buried in all the rubbish. And then in a couple of weeks' time, you suddenly have a memory that you got an email from somebody, and have you done anything about it? And it's buried somewhere down your inbox and you really can't get at it. Email is an absolute pain. It allows communication if it's properly managed, but the key thing is managing it, because unmanaged email makes everything hard and stressful. You get tickets. You remember the days we used to go to places on planes and trains, you know, the dim and distant past a year ago. We used to get our plane tickets by email. We used to get all of those things, and finding them sometimes was impossible. So let's look at the email address itself, what it actually is. The email address falls into various bits. And it's useful to know it because when you're looking at an email address in future, you'll understand a little bit more about it. At the very end of the email address is the country. Now, just inevitably, the USA is different because they invented the internet. Well, they actually didn't, but the research work was done there. So American companies are .com at the end. UK companies are .co.uk, or in Germany, .de, or in Spain, .es. The very last bit tells you the country that it's come from. And if you find emails coming in from strange places, there was a wave several months ago with emails coming in pretending to be from UK companies, but the addresses were actually in Bulgaria. That made a change because usually the problem has been coming from Nigeria. But if you understand what the real email address is, that helps. The next bit, which is called the domain, is the name of the company or organization with the country at the end. So email.com is a company. There's plenty others, apple.com. Watson.name. And this is an interesting one. Did you know that your family could buy that if your name was Watson, which would be kind of stupid if it wasn't, but you could buy the Watson.name, and then worldwide, nobody else can have Watson.name. So you could be John at Watson.name or Sue and Phil at Watson.name, and that is completely unique. And it's an awful lot easier to remember than ab472jb at gmail.com. There's also a .scot domain. I know the person that's got the McInnes.scot name. He happens to be a climber, if you know who I'm talking about. And I own the moss.scot domain, and all of our family route their email through it. My brother, my cousins, whatever else, they've got a moss.scot email address, and they're unique. There can only ever be one McInnes.scot, one Amazon.de in the whole world. And that uniqueness is important, because as long as you know that that's actually where something is coming from or going to, you know it's genuine. And then the last bit is the username. So in this case, Jane Smith is unique. There is only one Jane Smith at email.com. As we know to our cost, there is only one Katie Innes at acit.org.uk, and her email address is Katie. If there was another Katie, it might be Katie2 or whatever else. And there we have Joe Blogs, and you can choose a display name. So if you've got one of these horrible email addresses that doesn't actually tell you very much, you can put a name that will display on the email so that people can more readily understand who it is that it's from. But there is no check that that display name ties to the email address. And the danger there is, and I'll come back to this briefly in a few minutes, but actually leading into the scams workshop that we're doing in a few weeks' time. Just because something says it's coming from accounts at hmrc.gov.uk doesn't mean it's necessarily coming from there, because people can hide, they can spoof it, and we'll give you a method of checking these things, but it's increasingly common. I'm on a spam mailing list from the Consumers Association, because they're always tracking these things, and some of the scams are so clever, but we'll come back to that. So, setting up an email and addressing it to somebody. The first thing is you can just simply to. So in the to box, you can put the one name, or the names of a couple of family members, or a couple of people in your bridge group, whatever it is, and that's fine. There is no realistic limit to the number of people you can have in the to line of an email, though it becomes more and more confusing for the recipients. What is very common is people also do a carbon copy. Now, if you're of a certain age, you'll remember carbon paper you used to put between sheets of paper when you were typing, and you'd have a carbon copy was kept. And all a CC does is you might be sending an email to to somebody in the bridge group, but you want to carbon copy all the people in the committee because it's to do with a tournament you're involved in or whatever. So you would, in the to line, the important recipients, and in the CC, the carbon copy, everybody else who might want to see it. And the important thing to realize is that everyone sees all the other people's names. And that's fine if it's your bridge group or something like that, because everyone sees who has got the email, everyone sees that they're only getting a copy of it, and they see who everybody else is involved. That's great. The downside to that is that everyone sees all the email addresses, and there are situations where you do not want everyone to see all the addresses, either because you want to keep other people's privacy by not sharing their email address, or sometimes you don't want everyone to see who's getting it. And that's what BCC is, the blind carbon copy. If I send an email to Katie and then blind carbon copy all of the people who are in the session, for instance, people will see I have sent it and anyone that I've put in the CC box, the carbon copy box, but they will only see their name in the to box. You do not see all the other lists of people in the blind carbon copy list. So you're starting to protect all the people on your list. And a smart tip, and one that I've used both at work and in other situations, if I send an email to me and then blind carbon copy all of you who are attending this session, all you do is you see there's an email to me and to you, and you don't see anybody else who's involved in it. I get a copy in my sent folder, and I get another copy from the email system to show it's actually been sent. So I can see what's gone, and in the sent folder version, I can actually see who it went to check it, because it's amazingly easy to get that wrong. But BCC is extremely useful if you're trying to protect people's privacy, or for whatever reason, you just don't want everyone to see everything. So back to the scam bit. Check where an email is coming from when it arrives in your inbox, and check all the buttons. And it's actually quite simple to do. If you hover your mouse, if you're on a laptop or a desktop, or just gently touch, but don't long touch, it's different on different phones and tablets, either the sender of an email or any buttons in the email, what happens is that you actually get the opportunity, there we are, and it's different on different platforms. See, desktops, laptops, phones, all different. But if you just hover over or touch, you can see who it's come from and who it has been sent to. So you actually get the chance, before anything else happens, to check what's happening with an email. And here is an example of a scam email that was sent to an O2 customer, saying that there's, we're about to take £235.98 from your account. By hovering over what looks to be an O2 address at the bottom, the window pops up, you can see in red, and it shows you that actually the email address or the website you will link out to is nothing to do with O2. The reason that there's a £235.98 bill there is to panic you into saying, what, I don't even have an O2 account. Or if you do, why are they taking so much money? Well, they're not, it's a scam. So you hover it over the email address or the button and you get the answer. So now we're moving on to common mistakes in email. Because we've all done it. Anybody who tells you that they've not done an oops moment is telling you porky pies. Not that I'm accusing people of doing that, but we all make mistakes. The first one is to send an email to the wrong recipients. Email tries to be very helpful when you're filling in the to box. And if you start typing a name like bank manager, it will pop up a whole list of names starting with B. And I know somebody who sent Brian Lamb a whole load of information about their personal financial situation that was meant to go to the bank manager as part of a loan application. Luckily, Brian Lamb was a friend. But it's so easy to do, and regularly, not ACIT, but another charity I work with, I get emails for another Colin altogether, and I just get back to the administrator and it just says, wrong Colin again, and she grabs it and sends it to the right Colin. It's easy done. Emails trying to be helpful, And unless we've got our brains switched on, we don't realize we're actually we're putting the wrong recipient in an email. Equally, a reply all. If somebody sends out an email to a whole list of people with CC on it, for instance, so there's 30 or 40 names inviting me to attend a session, and it's being given by Joe Blogs, and I reply to, say, Katie, and say, Katie, if Joe's giving it, I don't want to be there. If I reply all, everyone, including Joe Blogs, gets my copy of the email. I wanted to reply to one person, reply, but the reply and the reply all buttons, annoyingly, are side by side on most email systems. In fact, sometimes there's 2 clicks to be able to choose between them. And it's so easy to do, to send the wrong email just by using reply all rather than reply. And also, and this is one that happens a bit less because people are more aware of it. If you have a situation that you get an email with a large list of names on it, and you then forward that email on to somebody else, all of a sudden, everybody who has got it, their email address is out there. And if you have emailed that onto a mailing list, if you have forwarded that onto a mailing list, there could be 30 or 40 people who you have accidentally leaked the email address of other people to. So you've got to be very careful of that. GDPR would not take very kindly to it because it's actually illegal to do, but more to the point, you can upset a lot of people by passing their email addresses on. We're all trying to keep each other, relatively safe in this. And a thing that I see quite common is that people get a phishing email, phishing being the word for when you receive a scam email, like the O2 one, and you click through and you start to key in, it asks you to confirm your user account and password, or even worse, your bank details. You go through it and you suddenly realize that you have clicked on a phishing email and you've done something and you don't know what it is. We don't have time to talk about that just now, but we have all done it. And this week alone, this being only Tuesday, we've already had 3 or 4 of those. On an average week, we get about a dozen of these emails between my wife and I. If it looks wrong, try the hover test. If you're not happy, don't do anything with it, ignore it. And then there is the situation where something happens and you send somebody an email, or you're replying to an email, and emotion maybe takes over, and you say you put something in the draft version, or you send it before you had a chance to think about it, or you've not actually thought it through clearly, and it's gone. And unsending email really doesn't work. So what I would suggest you do is, when you've written your email, cancel out of it, and when it asks you if you want to save it in draft, say yes. Go away, have a cup of coffee, and the more emotion that's involved in it, the bigger the cup of coffee. Then go back to your draft email, which will be sitting in the drafts folder, open it, and make the corrections to get it to what it should probably have said in the first place. Sometimes quick, which email supports, is not clever. So I've mentioned email lists. Now, this is one of these things that is wonderful when you use it and appalling if it's misused. Email lists give you a tremendous amount of options. It allows you, for instance, and we're talking about the bridge group because that's quite a good one, rather than having to remember all the names in the bridge group and put them in the to box or the CC box or whatever every single time, you set up a list, a bridge group list or a neighbours list. In our street, for instance, we've got a neighbours list, and either on email or on WhatsApp, but that's for another day. It allows you just to type in the letters NEI, and it will know that I want to send an email to the neighbours, and all the neighbours' emails are available that way. It's safer, it's faster. You're not going to pick up a wrong email address by accident, and it makes it more likely you're going to get everybody, because there's nothing worse than missing somebody out. Even better if you use BCC. So you send the email to yourself, and in the BCC list, send it to everybody. And that way it's gone. But there is a requirement in doing that to keep that list up to date. We'll stick with the bridge group. Somebody new joins the bridge group, make sure you've added them to the list. Somebody leaves the group, you know, somebody's ill and drops out. You must keep that list up to date. It's not difficult, but if you're going to use the list, you've got to make sure that you're using it accurately. And keep the individual details updated as well. Simple things like somebody gets married, or changes their name for another reason, make sure you change the name to the new name. A really good bad example, we're just past Christmas, and we are still getting Christmas cards from our neighbours that were misdirected. So we live at number 10, and people from number 6 up to number 15 have had Christmas cards for us delivered to them because people don't have the correct postal address. Keeping the details of the list up to date are important. Email folders. Now, I'm not going to say that I've ever had 32,000 unread emails in my inbox like that picture, but I have come across people who've got 40 or 50 unread emails with the red badge on them in the inbox. How are you going to manage that at all? You cannot get through those and remember what's in them. The answer actually is relatively simple. How many emails should you have in your inbox? Does anybody know? Psychologists would say never more than 10 emails in your inbox, because they will lie there and you won't remember who they're from or what you're trying to do with them. What is the point of your inbox? The point of your inbox is it's the things you have yet to get to. And if you get things that should be got rid of, get rid of them. Deal with them. Because the more you have, you're going to lose sight of what they are. But how are you going to get down to only having 10 emails in your inbox? Well, the answer is the inbox is the things that you've got to deal with urgently. Sometimes you get, I get loads of invitations from, from various places for cheap weekends or for discounted goods or whatever. I read them and I bin them. The answer, and I've got to flag this, every email package works differently. It's not even as simple as on Apple iPhones, this email package does this, on Android something else does, on a laptop something else does. There are dozens of different email packages. I personally don't use the standard package that comes with Apple at all. I use another one. And they all work differently, but they all allow you to have folders. Not only can you create folders, you can create subfolders. So everything to do with the example, in this case, Holidays 2022, when we're going to a tour of Spain in May, you put everything in it. All the inquiries, all the chats that you've had with the people who are going with you, your booking references, all of that, you file away in the Spain tour May, so that at some point in the future for, when you're looking at, well, what are our flight details again? or what hotel are we staying in on the 17th? It's all tucked away in that subfolder of holidays, Spain tour May. Then you're back for a few weeks and you're going to enjoy Edinburgh without too big a festival. Well, mind you, next year there'll be a big festival. But you're going to Jill's wedding in August, and all the details of that get put in that folder. By managing the folders and just making sure that you take advantage of how easy they are to use, you get a huge range of benefits. The first thing that you do is that when an email comes in, if you don't have to reply to it, just move it to the right folder. And usually it's as simple as just right-clicking or two-finger tapping, whatever it is, and you can then move an email straight to the correct folder. And if you have sent an email and reply, pop into your sent folder and move the emails that you sent into the right folder. So you've got a complete chronology of they sent this, I sent that, we said this, the whole thing all in that folder, and it's A, all visible there because it's all in one place, and B, it's not masking or hiding anything else. It then becomes just a habit, managing your email, and all of a sudden everything tells the story and everything is easy to find again. And you can go back into a folder, and when you come back from your Spain tour, you might want to keep 2 or 3 of the emails. Delete the rest. Why are they cluttering up your folders? They're just cluttering up your hard drive or your online storage, whatever you're doing. Or archive them. And that's a subject for another day. Happy to do that, to talk you through that in a one-to-one. But one of the ways to do it is very often there's an archive facility in your email system or an email archive system, but that's out with the subject for today. Right, I'm going to be completely honest. I very seldom make more than 4 or 5 typing mistakes in a day. Some people make fewer, some people make more, but everyone makes typos. And we've all seen the examples of even on road signs. There's a famous road sign in Wales with an English and a Welsh translation. The Welsh translation says, "Could somebody please translate this to Welsh?" Because the sign writer just picked that up and put that in Welsh, which is kind of useless. Always, after you've typed something, read it. Just go back over it, because it's so easy. For instance, not and now can be, particularly with autocorrect popping in, can change it. And the difference between I'm now going to be arriving at 2 o'clock and I'm not going to be arriving at 2 o'clock can be fairly fundamental. Sometimes the mistakes can be quite significant, sometimes they're quite silly. Autocorrect is wonderful. It does try to help. Usually it's good, but sometimes it's far from perfect. And there are benefits to it if you train it. That my autocorrect can do I and no, because that's just the way I am. Far more fun than saying yes and no. And it can also do nicknames. And you can train your email system, or you can train autocorrect generally, which you can use for everything, to pick up the words that you use, which might be technical words, it might be names of people, which it will not know. And that way it's more likely to correct your mistyping of that into the correct word. And another one that's worth looking at, and I recommended it to Katie a while back, is something called Grammarly. And it works not just for emails, but for letters and reports and things. And I used to use it extensively when I was working, because what it does, it not only looks at your spelling, but it will look at the construction of your sentences in various languages, and it will allow you to get your grammar right. And if you have used a word wrongly, it will help you to get the word correct. So actually you end up with grammatically correct English or whatever. That does not mean necessarily that it's what you wanted to say. You've still got to read it, but it's a brilliant piece of software, and there is a free package. I use the free package on my phone and my laptop because I'm not using vast volumes of stuff anymore, but it does tidy up, particularly if you're in a hurry, it does tidy up the English that you're mistyping into better mistyped English. Then we move on to attachments. The source of more stress than is credible at times, because attachments are absolutely wonderful. It's the ability to take photos, short videos, music, even plane and rail tickets, and attach them to an email. If a couple of us are going on a flight somewhere, and I get the air tickets and the boarding passes mailed to me, I can email the boarding pass to the other person or people who are going, and they then have them on their phone or whatever else. You can send lots of things. Now, I'm not saying you can send everything, because there are limits to the size. Different email systems, different companies have got different policies. But typically I've seen 20 megabytes as a limit. And if you've got 2 or 3 big photos, that can be too much for that, and your email will get rejected. So it's brilliant, but you've got to find ways of doing things sensibly. Short videos are good if you come across a video on YouTube that you like. Rather than try and send the whole video, just send the link to it. Photos, if you've got photos online, just send the link to it. But you can also send the actual photos. There are a lot of drawbacks as well when it comes to attachments, because people are very rightly scared of viruses. Only yesterday I had 2 separate, one message, one email from somebody, and I looked at the email and thought, that's interesting. You would never use that language. And there was here's a picture of us last week and something to click. And if I'd clicked it, I would have, goodness knows what mess I'd have been in. So people are naturally scared of it. So you send pictures to people and they might not open them because they are rightly nervous. Equally, you've got the limited size thing that I was talking about. If you send too many pictures or too big pictures, and the bigger the picture is, the higher quality it is, and it's very tempting to send quality pictures to people, you can end up in the situation that people just cannot see it. And a very big picture, maybe people can't open on their phones or their tablets. Some email software is absolutely brilliant, and it allows you to attach things to emails in half a dozen different ways. You can either find the picture and say, email it to Joe Blogs, or you can go into an email to Joe Blogs and then click the paperclip icon and find your photo and attach it. Some email software seems to be written on the assumption that you don't want to do these things, and it makes it hard. Unfortunately, if you've got what you've got to try and find the easiest way around it. Personally, I prefer to go through the pictures and find them and then create an email from them, because that way I know what I'm actually sending. But overall, attachments is probably the most useful thing about email. It's why most people use it. and it's effectively free. In the good old days, you used to have to print things out, get an envelope, write the envelope, put a stamp on it, take it up to the post office, and it would eventually arrive, depending upon where you're sending it. My wife's got an aunt in Canada, just moved into the centre of Canada. If we send her a letter, it can take 3 or 4 weeks to get to her, and she's then got to go to the local post office, to her post box, to pick it up. If we send something by email, she'll be back with us saying, asking questions about it, typically, knowing her, within about 2 minutes. It's free, it's cheap, it's straightforward, and a little bit of experimentation is extremely useful. Play with it, see what you can do, and I've mentioned links before, and again, I don't want to get into too much detail on that, but very often the quick way to send something is to send a link to something and let people open it themselves. There's been a lot of chit chat. I don't know how many of you are Facebook users, but there's a Lost Edinburgh group, and people are perpetually putting up photographs of bits of Edinburgh in the 40s and 50s, or going back into the 20s and 30s. And it's amazing how many people are recognizing people and places and sending links back and forward, because it makes it easier. And finally, searching. It doesn't matter how good your memory is, and certainly mine is not as good as it used to be. I'll put that down to it being so full of useful facts. But if you can't find an email, it may as well never have arrived or never been sent. So how do you find that email? Well, actually, it's fairly simple. If you know who sent it, and you don't have to know what their email address is, all you need to know is their name. There is a search, pardon me, a search facility in all email systems, and possibly also on your phone, laptop, whatever, that allows you to search by the name that people have chosen. So rather than jb17@gmail.com, the Joe Blogs one, so you can search on that name. Or I sent an email to, I'm sure I sent an email to John last week, but I can't find it. So what emails are there with John's name in it? And I can search for the ones that I've sent him. And that's very useful, because it means now that I can find what I thought I had and lost it. And all of the searches will search through your folders and subfolders, not just your inbox, but everywhere. It takes a minute or two to do sometimes, because it's got a lot of work to do, but it doesn't mean you've got a chance of finding it again. But it gets even better. You can search by a word or a phrase. Wasn't there something came in about that planning application? Wasn't there something about these horrible bollards that are put up in Comiston Road? And you can search on that word or phrase, and it will, the email software will read through every single email, either in your inbox or in your whole email system, or just in a particular folder, if that's how you've set it up, set up the search. And it will look at every word and see and try and match it and give you it back. So you can find what you've lost. And if you've got it in appropriate folders, like I was saying earlier on, it actually makes it that bit easier. It's fast, relatively easy, because you've got to work out where the search is and how it works. But take 5 minutes, play with it, learn about it, and it's actually very, very clever. Email searching is something that I found 85 or 90% of people don't know is there, and can be an absolute lifesaver. It saves you having to read through tons and tons of emails to find that one. So in summary, email is a huge benefit. But if you don't manage it, it's disastrous. If you go back to the image I had earlier, if you've got 32,000 unread emails in your inbox, what chance have you of finding something? And if you've not read them in the first place, which is what the 32,000 odd number tells you, you don't even know what you've got. You may as well not have it. Actually, I'll go further. If you've got more than a handful of unread emails in your inbox, you'd be better off without email, because people are sending you things, maybe useful, maybe useless, and you're not actually looking at it and getting hold of it. Why do you have email in the first place? The point of email is communication, but if you don't read your post, it becomes a problem. So if you do manage your email, it makes life so much easier, so much better. And good email software is amazing. Now, the one comment I'm going to make about that, all email software is different. Gmail is very good. Outlook from Microsoft is very good. Apple Mail is very good. They are not the only email systems out there. There are dozens and dozens. The majority of them are free. And frankly, I'd be willing to bet that whatever one you're on, there is a better one out there. But if the one you're using is right, if it's giving you what you want, if it allows you to read and send and manage email lists, if it allows you to search for things and keep things in folders, then it's the right one. But don't necessarily believe it's the only one, because there are some really good systems out there. And the one that I use, I'm not going to name because it's not the point of this exercise, but the one that I use automates a lot of what I want to do and allows me to manage email better than Gmail, Outlook, or Apple Mail for my uses. That does not mean that the same would be true of anybody else.